Everyone, welcome to my, relatively new but kind of old, redone FPL Black Box. This is the kind of pilot. I know we've got a very important game week coming up the weekend, and still a game week in progress. But I wanted to get something out before the end of the season because I'm going to kind of refine this, ready for next year, which I'm hopefully going to start doing more regularly. So this is FPL Black Box. It's going to be in three parts every week. There's going to be a game week roundup of what's been happening so far, how my week's gone, things like that. Then there's going to be a game week preview for the game week coming up. So players who I think we should be looking at, sort of tactics, ideas, what I'm planning to do, that kind of thing. And then the third section is going to be the actual black box element to this, which is just thinking about some decisions that I've made and how I think I can learn from them and hopefully become a better manager. So I hope that format works for people. I'm interested to know what you'll think of this pilot as it goes out, and we can kind of work out how it can be better, or if you like it, we'll carry it on as it is next year. So thanks for watching this. There should be a YouTube video. There will be this will be put on to Spotify and iTunes as well, so you can listen to it on there. But there will be some kind of images and things, and I'll try and talk those through as we go. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope this works well. So I'm putting this video out on, well, it's currently 3:45 on Monday. So obviously there's a lot of games still to go. We've barely kind of scratched the surface of the game week so far. I bought in Chris Woods, who got a goal against nine men Norwich. Was obviously hoping for a bit more from him there, but 7 points from a 6 million striker isn't too bad, so I can't really complain. Vardy's a bit of a disappointment. Leicester were really poor against Spurs, and he looked so good against Sheffield United, so I was happy to keep him this week. I mean, the really good thing was that Ings scored a goal and then missed a penalty, so only ended up with 4 points and no bonus, which is very unlike him as well. And if he'd got two goals in that, my rank would have plummeted as well. So no Burnley defence and no Pope and no Peters, like certain people have got. Uh, both my strikers have played, but I'm kind of happy with how it's gone so far. I mean, the kind of big test is to come. My team is a bit of a kind of bunch of miscreants this week, as I've described them. I didn't really know what to do so much. I mean, I had issues all over the place, but I'm free hitting next week, as I'm going to talk about in a minute. So I had to get rid of Calvert-Lewin. He's just stinking up my team. So he left for Wood. But then, I've got Pulisic away at Liverpool. I've got Antonio away at United. Alonso I'm having to play. If he doesn't play for whatever reason, then Justin's going to come in with a -1, which isn't too good. I took a punt on Sterling, who's now playing a managerless Watford, which could be great if he plays, but who knows if he's going to start. Alexander-Arnold at home to Chelsea. It's all just a bit. I'm really not too confident this week. So if I can make it through this week with a kind of a grey arrow or something close to a grey arrow, then I'd be pretty happy, in all honesty. I think that's pretty unlikely though, because as you can see, I've benched Greenwood, which means I'm banking on West Ham putting up a bit of a fight against United. So Martial and Rashford could really hurt me this week. And if you're listening to this later in the week, they probably already have. So you can enjoy that if you've got them. They're the ones I'm really worried about. I mean, Martial looks a solid captain pick this week. So if you've got him, then I imagine you're going to be celebrating some points at the end of the week. So well done if you have. Although if he's blanked, unlucky. That's just how it goes sometimes. He looked a great pick. So I wouldn't be beating yourself up if he does blank. So that's me this week. I mean, in terms of what I've got to play for this season, I'm currently around 30k in the rankings, which is pretty good considering the season I've had, which has been quite a struggle throughout. I'm I'm still aiming for that 10k finish, but I think it would be quite unlikely. I've got the free hit to use next week, which is quite exciting. I've not had that on a final day before. I've got a couple of mini leagues up for grabs. I'm 20 points off in a cash league for some money, so that'd be nice to get something out of that. I'm also in a cup semi-final game against shout out to Andy in my cash league. We are currently, I think, neck and neck going into the games over the next few days. So his team looks a lot better than mine, but magic of the cup, isn't it? You never know what could happen. So hoping that some of my players can perform and get me through to the final. So looking forward, it's key. It's the key week. It's all been building up to this 38 weeks with the free hit in my pocket. Not really sure when to use it. I think it's the perfect chip to use, in a blank game week. So you know, not really having one of those this year has meant that people have used it and not everyone's benefited from it. I know Andy on the Scoutcast ended up take losing points due to it, and I think that's a strong possibility with a free hit, especially if you willed it to make lots of changes and taking out players who are doing quite well. Um, I'm in quite a fortunate position in a way because my team looks a bit of a joke at the moment, so it's kind of the perfect time to use it. But I'm still taking out some players who I think could perform really well. Um, like I haven't got De Bruyne in my team. Someone like Vardy could still do well. The players like Pulisic and the Liverpool defence have all got chances of scoring quite highly. So it's not without risk the free hit, but what I've tried to do is just really, try and maximise the potential points that I've got. So I'm just going to go through the team now. This is the first draft I've made, first time I've looked at it. I haven't really been looking on Twitter to see anyone's drafts. I thought I'd just put it together with my own mind before we start getting influenced by each other and that kind of thing. So this is what I've got currently. So I've got Martinez in goal. They got home game against Watford. Watford lost their manager. Martinez is 4.3 million. I got him 4.2. So really really cheap. Goalkeeper with a good fixture. I don't really want to be paying. If I'm pushing for that 10k finish, I don't want to be putting a lot of money into my defence. So that's why I've gone for the cheapest starting goalkeeper with a great fixture. So I think he's a great option this week. In defence, I've currently got Mendy, Peters, Long, Tanganga, and Williams. Now, Tanganga and Williams, obviously, we can just discredit straight away because they are purely there because of their cheap. Williams has now gone down to 3.8, which makes him the first 3.8 defender this season at a great time. He could end up with a game with Shaw out anyway. I'm surprised that he's been sold more, recently than before, but that's how it goes sometimes. But obviously, I'm not expecting them to play. So I'm doubling up with the Burnley defence at home to Brighton. The Pope is just a machine. Most clean sheets in the season this year, and Burnley have come out and said that kind of it's all going to be all gung ho to get him that final clean sheet. So rather than going for the win or going for anything, they want to get him the clean sheet. And you've got Peters and Long there both at 4.3 with a good home game to end of the season and that kind of motivation. And really looking round at the defences, nothing really screams at me that I need to get in a defender from this team. Liverpool are the exception to that away at Newcastle, but they haven't got a defence, and it's their final home game, and the Gameweek 38 is such a lottery in terms of what can happen. So I don't really want to put more money than I need to into the defence. Obviously, Alexander-Arnold could hurt me, but I'm actually going for Mendy. Mendy could become another City defender. Depends if we get some lineup news or anything like that. But I really like the look of a City defender this week. There's very very little chance of Norwich scoring in that game. I think no matter who City put out, Buendia's now suspended. Their striker who couldn't score anyway is now suspended. That means we're going to have to play Pookie, who's just got no confidence at all. Norwich just look completely down and out, and they're going to defend with 9, 10 men behind the ball the whole game. So I think a defender, especially one who likes to put in crosses like Mendy does, could be a good pick this week. Obviously, Walker on the other side is another option if they both start. In midfield, I'm going for Sterling, Salah, David Silva, Fernandez, and then just the cheap option of Guendouzi, which means I'm switching my formation. So I'm not playing five in midfield. Guendouzi is just going to rot on the bench. Sterling and David Silva, home game against Norwich. I think two attackers is the minimum we need for that game. Again, it's dependent on whether we get the team news, but really you want to be stocking up on that. There's going to be so many goals in that game. You would have thought. It's just if we can get the right ones in. David Silva is so popular. I'm seeing his name everywhere on the boards, on Twitter, absolutely everywhere. People are just convinced that he's not only going to play, but people are going to be teeing him up for every opportunity. He's going to be on the free kicks, the penalties, everything. And actually, when he plays, he does seem to dent De Bruyne's appeal a little bit. De Bruyne's now gone, well, so 9 goals and got 1 assist in that time. I'm not saying his star's sort of waning, but with David Silva around, sort of helping out with the assist duties, the onus isn't just on De Bruyne to create. So David Silva's been in good form as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him scoring some points. He's been captained by a lot of people as well. I think he's a great pick there. I don't think there's going to be any weird kind of subbing him off at 21 minutes, or whatever his shirt number is, to try and do something like they did with John Terry. I think he's too classy for that. So I think he'd be happy with a 90-minute run out and hopefully getting us a couple of goals on his final game. And then Sterling. I think you need to have one of Sterling or Jesus in there. It's going to be one of them up front leading the line. It has to be. He's not really going to play Gundogan. He hasn't really got too many options, so it's going to be one of those. So I think whoever's leading the line um, for City, you need to get. If they're both playing, so if Sterling and Jesus are both playing, I'd rather have Sterling just because of how explosive he is and how his good form. And also when we've actually got some strikers now who look like they're competing for golden boots or just hit some form at the right time or have got a good fixture. I think the striker spots are actually quite important. So I'm happy to rock with the two City midfielders and the defender, and then sort of put my money up front to some other players. The other two in my midfield are Fernandez. He's going absolutely nowhere. Leicester look absolutely awful against Spurs. They played quite well against Sheffield United, but against Spurs, they just couldn't live with some decent players sort of running at them and not just trying to defend. So I think they're going to really struggle with Bennett and James Justin just doesn't look good enough to me, and that kind of thing. So Fernandez looks key to unlocking them as well. I think people who have got sort of Fernandez and Martial, or Fernandez and Rashford, and aren't on free hits, I wouldn't be looking to get rid of those. I think there's still potential for some points from those players. So I want to definitely have one of those United midfielders there. And then finally, there's Salah. So Salah's a funny one. I sold him. Well, I didn't sell him. I didn't really consider him on the wild card I played a few weeks ago. He hit sort of 18 points against Brighton, and I was thinking it was a terrible decision. But luckily, Sterling came in and did a good job. So, I've got no bad feelings towards Salah at the moment. I just think he's playing against a Newcastle side who have no defence. And for someone who is chasing the Golden Boot, he's probably not going to get it. I think he's probably a bit too far off now, unless he gets a couple of goals against Chelsea. But he looks, every time I see him, he looks sort of hungry to get on the score sheet. I think a little bit too hungry that sometimes he's sort of snatching at chances a bit and not kind of being too clinical and maybe making the wrong option a few times. I think if you're looking for someone a bit different, I think Mane is a great alternative to him at the same price. Mane's the complete opposite. You'd always know he's going to make the right option and be more clinical. I think overall he is a better player than Salah, but I think Salah for FPL is you want your player to be taking those shots and being a bit more selfish. But Mane's ownership in the top 10k is really low and Salah's is really high. So if you're looking for someone a bit different, I might end up doing the switch myself. Then that's an option for you as well. So final bit of chat on this is my strikers. I've gone pretty punchy on my strikers. I've gone for Aubameyang, I've gone for Kane, and I've gone for Ings. Aubameyang is at home to Watford, chasing the Golden Boot. Watford have got no manager. Arsenal are really good at the moment. It's just a bit of a no-brainer, I think, to be getting him on the free hit for that game. His two goals against City were fantastic. I loved the cheekiness of Megan Edison in goal for that. Nketiah's going to be back. We don't know if he's going to play. We don't know if Lacazette's going to play. We want to tap into that Watford game, so I think Aubameyang looks prime. I'd be really surprised to see sort of any free hit teams without Aubameyang in, which is I think is perfect for that chip really because it might be that people have other fires to put out, whereas we can be a bit more flexible in terms of bringing in someone like him, which is great. Danny Ings is there, 7.6. I mean, I saw him in that first game when they were back against Norwich, and I thought he looked really sharp, and I'm really kicking myself for not going for him, on the wild card. I was watching that game against Bournemouth, and he just looks fantastic again. And he's just one of those players who, when you're watching them and you're that nervous about everything they do, you probably need to get them in your side. So he'll definitely be coming in. They've got a home game against Sheffield United. Sheffield United have been very inconsistent since they've come back. They look like world beaters when they play Chelsea, but then they look terrible when they play against Leicester. So you never know what you're going to get from them. I do fancy Ings to get a goal in that game at least, just because of how well Southampton look at the moment. And how poor Sheffield United look in some of the games. The one thing I will say though is that Southampton have all season been weirdly a better side away from home than they have been at home. I do worry a little bit about that, but he still scored against Brighton. Got 8 points in that game. So I'm not too concerned. Not concerned enough to not consider him. I think Other people might be going for Jesus up front. I can totally see that as well. Some people might have Rashford. There's plenty of good strikers, but I think Ings in the home game looks decent. And finally, I have sold my soul, and I'm sure Andy will enjoy me talking about Harry Kane. I completely slagged him off the other night on the Scoutcast. I said, he had 2 shots against Leicester, scored 2 goals. Can't really consider him. But I thought he looked absolutely fantastic against Leicester. I mean, Leicester made it very easy for him, but his passing was fantastic. His goals were clinical. His all-round play looked much more like the Harry Kane of old, and it's exactly what I wanted to see from him, sort of under Mourinho. I thought Mourinho did say he's got strikers who score goals, and I can't imagine he wants Kane to play in that really deep lying, almost midfield role. I think he wants him to be spearheading the attack. And I think the last few games we have seen more of that from him. He's playing against Palace away. Palace are shipping goals for fun at the moment. I would be astounded if Kane or Son is another great option that some people should be considering. Didn't come away with some attacking returns in that game. Spurs have hit form at exactly the right time for a free hit on the final week, and I think Kane and Son, one of those two, should be in everyone's free hit team. So that's my team at the moment. It'd be interesting to see how this changes sort of throughout the week. I'm not planning. I think the general structure of it, with having the three City, with going with the strikers, the expensive strikers. I mean, I'd be surprised if Ings and Aubameyang didn't end up my favourite team, but I might end up going for Son over Kane, something like that. But the general makeup of these are the teams I want to target, I think should stay like this until the end of the week. The lineups, I'm hoping we get some news about who's going to start, particularly for City. I think that's going to be really, really key. It could be, rest for everyone. They could play the kids. I mean, they've got nothing to play for. Norwich have got nothing to play for. There's nothing riding on that game whatsoever, which is why I think people are so keen on David Silva because he looks set to play that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. But that is what I'm considering. I'd love to see all your free hits. So if you wanted to tweet me with your free hits or message me with what I think, I can cast my eye over them. But there's plenty of options to get some points this week. So I'm hoping we make the right picks. So we now come on to the kind of the black box side. I'm keen to start these up again just to kind of reflect about things that have gone right or wrong throughout the season. I mean, my kind of season's on the right for you there to see. I got off to a pretty average start. I had a game week 1 rank of 523k, which I suppose isn't too bad. Which then dropped down to 755k and then up to 220k. But then after that, it was just awful. 600k, 1.9 million I went down to, then pulled it back up to a million, got stuck around the million mark, dropped down to 2 million. I found it a really difficult start to the season. And it wasn't till around sort of game week 12, game week 13 when I really felt like I had a handle on how things were going. And, I was kind of able to start getting in players who started doing quite well for me. It was too many punts at the start of the season. It was not being quick enough to react. I want to talk about in a minute. And I think actually the kind of the highlight of my season was around game week 27 when I got into the top 100k for the first time. So you can see the kind of the amount of green arrows I had over that period, just 2 red arrows from game week 11 down to game week 27, which kind of really kind of invigorated my season really. And there was a few players who were kind of key to that. So getting De Bruyne in, getting Ings in, getting Grealish in, those kind of players really sort of turned my season around, and sticking with them when lots of people were trying to kind of juggle and change them around. Actually, this season's been quite a lot about the patient side of things and just kind of waiting and holding out. And I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a minute. So I think for next season, it's hard to say I want to have a strong start because obviously you want to have a strong start, but it's about kind of putting yourself in a good position to be able to have that start, even if you make mistakes quite early on. So people play early wildcards to kind of correct mistakes, and I can see why that's a feasible strategy. Is you just kind of after 3 weeks, a pattern does start to emerge that you can start using your sense on a bit more, whereas that game week 1 is such a lottery. So let's have a look. I've just put down 3 things into kind of a lecture format. I'm sure everyone appreciates a good lecture these days. So let's just go through some of these. Um, So my first one here is just to move quickly and decisively at the start of the season. So that's something that I think people have a bit of a strange relationship with hits. Some people, people almost seem to be in one of two camps, quite polarizing. You either are seen as someone who takes a lot of hits, or you're seen as someone who doesn't take any. And either of those strategies is fine. But I think hits are there to be used to make good decisions for your squad. And really, the start of the season is when we need to be the most decisive, and we need to make sure that we're bringing in players who have got potential to score points, who are going to hit the price rises and get us more team value, and that aren't going to get away from us by reaching price points in which we can't get them in easy. I mean, an absolute perfect example of this the last two seasons is the cheap defenders. So Wan-Bissaka the year before this was a 4 million defender. I had him in from the start. I didn't play him enough, but he was there and he rose and rose and rose in price, and I ended up having him all season. He was just one member of my squad who I didn't need to touch from the first game week to the last game week. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get someone like that every week, but we have come close this season with Lundstrom. You all know John Lundstrom. I was probably one of the only people who didn't bring him in early, and there was definitely a degree of stubbornness around that. I actually went for O'Connell at the start because I thought his points, his minutes would eventually mean more points, and he'd play more games, and Lundstrom would lose his place because he wasn't even playing in the Championship last season. What I should have been able to do was adapt quickly, though, and I should have been aggressive with that transfer. Once I saw how well Lundstrom was playing and how important he was to Sheffield United's early form, I should have made that transfer. I should have done O'Connell to Lundstrom, you know, without a second thought, even if it cost you 4 points. Similar thing happened to me a few seasons ago. I went for Baines over Coleman, and it was clear from the first week that that was the wrong decision to make. Baines was just completely reliant on set pieces, whereas Coleman was, playing as a winger, getting so involved in attacks, getting goals and everything. And if I just made that transfer, even if I'd had other fires to put out, that Baines to Coleman transfer, a 4 point hit, would have paid off in 1 or 2 weeks straight away. So I think you can be stubborn about these things, but I think you do need to be aggressive with how these things are doing. And I think one of the reasons why people can get stubborn is they can think everyone's got Lundstrom now. I'm going to try and be clever and I'm going to go for someone else. Well, actually, you need to not worry about what other people are doing, especially this early on. If people are getting in Lundstrom as a 4 million defender and his price is going to go up to 4.6, 4.7, you're going to miss that boat if you don't act quickly. So don't worry what other people are doing. Don't worry if you're going to look like you're copying everyone else. If you've got a 4 million defender or a cheap striker or a cheap midfielder who's getting points and is going up in price, you've got to act early and decisively, otherwise you're going to miss the boat. Yeah, so this was kind of key to my season really. Fixtures breeds form, so I would never say to not look at fixtures. I think one of the when someone asks me about FPL and whether it's all luck or whether it's skill, there's a huge element of luck to it, but part of the skill is identifying where you think the fixtures are changing and when players are going to start hitting form. So a player who hasn't got any form at all could hit a couple of fixtures that you think look good because those teams concede lots of headed chances or concede lots of crosses from the wing, or you can use the stats and you can use your kind of intuition to pick out where you think a player who might not necessarily been playing too well might end up playing well, and that's the fixture the perfect time to do that. But it's important to remember that form doesn't die just because the fixtures turn. So, I mean, if I look back at my years of playing this game, I'm very, very clever well, I try and be too clever with things. I try and look not only to see when players are going to hit form, but I try and work out when players are going to come off form as well. It's a pretty dangerous game. I mean, Igalo a few years ago, I remember he was in great form for Watford, and I took him out before a run of something like Liverpool, City, Chelsea, something like that, where I really didn't expect him to get many points. He scored in, I think, all three games of those. And because he was so highly owned, because people were still buying him and his price was going up, it made him impossible for me to even get him back when the fixtures turned good again. So I ended up not only losing the points I would have gained, but I ended up, with a different striker who wasn't scoring as well and the inability to go back to him. So, it's important to think, when you're thinking about taking a striker out who's in form, what are the reasons for doing that? And actually, if you look at the Premier League currently, apart from outside of Liverpool, and Burnley, I guess the defensive, displays from teams is really nothing that exciting at the moment. So there's actually it's quite difficult to say that there's going to be a fixture run so bad where you should be selling a striker or a midfielder who's in good goal scoring form. So unless that changes in next season, I would just strongly advise not doing that. I mean, I know people have done that with Ings. People think, oh, we can't possibly keep this scoring run going, but strikers are so the confidence they get from scoring just makes them want to score more and more goals as well. So even when his fixtures turned, he carried on scoring. He's had the break, he's come back, he's carried on scoring, and that hasn't changed. So it's going to be, it's going to be hard for a player playing for a team like Southampton to get anywhere near like the Golden Boot. But you don't need a 6.5 striker to be doing what Danny Ings is doing. All you need is kind of a regular return of a goal, even every other game, and some bonus would be great for that. So don't just be careful when you're transferring these players out, just because they've got some difficult games. Yeah, and don't try to be too clever. Don't overthink things. Don't try and uh, you know if you think, oh, he's playing Newcastle and they've done this, so I need to take him out. Always think about the long term as well. It's not just that one game. If you think he's got a bad game, but then the fixtures after that are decent, just be careful about when you make the switches. And thirdly, and this is something that I really want to do. I think I said I'd do it, but I still haven't really done it. But this podcast helps me to do this thing. Is just that overthinking things tends to lead you to make worse decisions than originally. So I'm not talking about overthinking in terms of research. Research is great. If you don't really know what to do and you're spending time on Fantasy Scout, you're looking at stats, you're looking at numbers, all that kind of thing. That's all great. But what can happen is it gets to 11:30 or 11:29 on Saturday morning, and suddenly you just have a thought that pops into your head, which is like, oh no, actually, I'm just going to bench this guy and I'm going to play this guy instead, just because of some thought that comes to your head. Maybe you had a dream about something or something like that. And actually, I think that the times in which we sometimes make our best decisions is right at the start of the week. So setting up the bus team, as we like to call it, actually really helps me kind of work out what shape my team's in and what I need to do and what fires I need to put out and what I need to strengthen. So what I really want to do is, I'm not advising people to make those transfers right at the start because you've got price rise, you've got injuries, Champions League and Cup and that kind of thing. But I think it's worth just identifying where you think your weaknesses are and thinking about what your early thoughts are for those transfers, and just see how that changes throughout the week. So if you think you really want to get Aubameyang in for whatever reason because he's playing Watford, and then at the end of the week suddenly you decide that actually you want to get Kane in because you had a dream about it, just think, well, what were my reasons originally for thinking that I wanted to get Aubameyang in? Maybe they were quite solid. Using that, you can then actually use some research, do some tests, and see if your decision has switched because of anything in particular, or whether it's just because it's a whim. If you think you're being too clever, you probably are. Yeah, so this is where we as the week goes on and we start to see other people's teams, and this is something we can't get away from with Twitter and this kind of thing. We can always try and want to differentiate ourselves a bit too much. And I think it's a great way to play the game is not just doing what everyone else is doing and trying to be a bit different, but it has to be based on something. It has to be based on something that you think is the right reason for bringing in a certain player or captaining a certain player. Just doing something to be different more often than not will punish you. And at this stage of the season, that sort of thing isn't so important because it might be, I mean, for example, this week I'm banking on West Ham putting up a fight against United, whereas earlier in the season I would never have tried to do that. And it's because if I finish 100k or 50k, it doesn't really matter. But I think particularly when you're earlier on in the season, trying to be too clever about certain picks is something that can really hurt you. So don't base decisions on what other people are doing. Base decisions on what you think is the best thing for your team. Don't worry if you get labelled a sheep or if you get labelled. I mean, there's been talk this week about Chris Wood being a sheep pick and being a part of groupthink and that kind of stuff, and it's just rubbish because Chris Wood's a striker playing away at Norwich, who've been relegated bottom of the league. Like you don't need to be looking at other people's teams to think that Chris Wood's a good pick. And he scored as well. So it's things like that. It's people can get on your case about certain things, and I would just try your best to blank out what other people are doing and come to decisions for your own team. Don't be influenced by others. if you are the kind of, I mean, the community is amazing in terms of, you can talk to people, you can bounce ideas off people, you can ask people's advice. But at the end of the day, it's your team. You need to pick the players for your own team. Don't don't pick players just because other people are going for them. Don't pick players just because you want to be a bit different. Make your own judgments on things. And I think that's it. They're my kind of three tips from the end of this season. I'm going to try and carry this list on as things go. Hope it's useful. These are kind of they're quite basic kind of instructions, but I think we're all guilty of overcomplicating this game too much at times. Just a shout out to my missus who she doesn't watch any football at all. She purely bases her decisions on points. So she'll only bring in a player if he scored well over a period. She won't get rid of players who are doing well despite the fixtures, that kind of thing. The only advice I give her is when she's bringing in someone mad who I really don't think is very good. She's thrashing me this year. She's 12k in the world, just from playing a patient, non-overcomplicated game. And people get frustrated because they look at the teams they set up and they're only doing a little bit better with the transfers they made, all the overthinking. I think sometimes it's best just to slow things down a bit and just be a bit more considered in how we make decisions and not worry so much about other people and things like that. So I hope this has been useful. That's my first black box done. I'll be getting this out probably Tuesday morning. So good luck with the rest of your week this week. Very best of luck with Gameweek 38, the final Gameweek of the season. And I will be starting this up again for the next season when it begins in a very short time, probably in September. So thanks for watching. If you do want to support me, you can head over to my Ko-fi page. You can buy me a pint there. I'm really not into this paywall stuff. There won't be any content which I ever charge for or anything like that. But if you did want to buy me a pint, much appreciated. And if you want to DM me with any questions or suggestions for the show, then the show, is it a show? I guess it's a show, this podcast, whatever it is, then I'd be really happy to take any feedback off the back of it. And I can help you with your teams as well if you trust me enough to help you with your squad. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and I will see you on the Scoutcast this week. Thanks, guys.